These extraterrestrial humanoid beings arrived on Earth. They chose to take residence inside the center of the Earth, because the surface of the Earth was inhabited by human beings. At this point in time in Earth's history, the human beings who lived on the surface of the Earth were all of one tribe, the Ebenoid tribe. Since they live inside the Earth, these extraterrestrial beings have now become interterrestrial beings. The center of the Earth where these interterrestrial beings reside also contains an inner sun. The inner Earth has been called by a variety of names by cultures around the world, including Shambhala by Buddhist, Agartha by Tibetans, Kurnuji by the ancient Mesopotamians, the Duat or Aminta by the ancient Egyptians, Hades or the underworld by Europeans, Xibalba by the Mayans, and in modern times, the concept of the inner Earth has given rise to what is called the Hollow Earth theory. Unbeknownst to many human beings, the activities of these beings which reside inside the Earth has affected the course of human history and human development. The first and most noble of the beings which resides inside the Earth is called the Shayuk. Compared to human beings, the Shayuk would be considered geniuses with exceptional intelligence, and telepathic and telekinetic abilities. The Shayuk have a dark brown skin complexion, they are between 5 feet to 7 feet tall, and their heads, brains, and cranial capacity is much wider and larger than the average human. The Shayuk come to the Earth's surface occasionally to teach and to trade with certain tribes of human beings. The teachings of the Shayuk are so profound that when they come to the Earth's surface to teach, they are often called deities, gods, priests, prophets, messengers, and seers, and because of this fact, the Shayuk have strict laws which limit the interaction of Shayuk tribal members' contact with the humans on the surface. The Shayuk commonly interact and have mixed in with the surface world humans called the Danakil or Danakil, also known as the Afar people, in present-day Eritrea, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Somalia. The chief of the Shayuk is named King Fuokur, and his daughter is named Princess Radiya, and two of his brothers are named Amo and Yishak, who has always been jealous of his brother King Fuokur. King Fuokur's brother Amo had fallen in love with a surface-dwelling human female, and he would sneak to the surface world to visit her, and would also pass himself off to the surface-dwelling humans as a psychic and a magician, and for these acts, Amo was exiled to live on the surface, 20 miles outside of the present-day city of Mecca in Saudi Arabia. As long as the people in the inner Earth spent most of their life in the inner Earth, then they will not die. However, to be exiled to the surface world means a person from inner Earth will eventually die like the mortals on the surface. In the caverns adjacent to the Shayuk, resides another group of nobles called the Sinin. The Sinin are also highly intelligent, but also have a fighting spirit. The Sinin are between 5 feet to 7 feet tall and have a variety of complexions from yellow to brown, and they are hairless and are most noted for their cone-shaped heads. The Sinin commonly interact and have mixed with surface world humans including the ancient Egyptians, the Olmecs in present-day Central America, the Mangitog people in the African Congo, and the Paracas people in Peru. The chief of the Sinin is named King Lamsa, and his daughter is named Princess Lucina, and his son is named Prince Atif. One of the wretched group of beings which resides inside the earth is called the Samin. The Samin are grotesquely obese, pale, with long elephant-like noses, and are very negative and aggressive. The Samin were actually the manifested evil grafted out of the Sinin on their home world prior to these beings arriving on Earth. Since the Samin were grafted out of the Sinin, it is the responsibility of the Sinin to police and keep in check the evil activities of the Samin. It is said that an American named Richard Sharpshaver encountered the Sinin and called them the Turos, meaning interrogative robot, and he also encountered the Samin and called them Duros, meaning detrimental robot. One day, the wretched Samin raided and invaded the village of the Shayuk, stealing food and terrorizing the Shayuk family. When King Fuokur found out about this invasion by the Samin, he sent a telepathic message to King Lamsa stating that the Sinin has neglected their responsibility to keep the Samin in check, because the Samin were currently raiding and invading the village of the Shayuk. Upon receiving the telepathic message from King Fuokur, King Lamsa went with his brethren to the caverns of the Shayuk to stop the invasion by the Samin and to drive the Samin back to whence they came. After driving the Samin away from the lands of the Shayuk, King Lamsa apologized to King Fuokur, but tension remained between the Shayuk and the Sinin for some time after the incident. In order to make peace between the Shayuk and the Sinin, King Lamsa offered his daughter Princess Lucina to be a wife of King Fuokur. King Fuokur accepted the peace offering from King Lamsa, and in turn offered his daughter Princess Radiya to be the wife of King Lamsa's son Prince Atif, as was the custom, and there was peace in the land for some time between the two tribes of the Shayuk and the Sinin. However, King Lamsa's daughter Princess Lucina was angered and outraged because she did not want her father to give her away to be the wife of the Shayuk King Fuokur. Princess Lucina felt like an outcast and out of place living amongst the Shayuk people, and she did not like living by the strict laws of the Shayuk people. Princess Lucina always wanted to marry a man from her own people, the Sinin, and she did not want to be married to a Shayuk man. One day Princess Lucina, now the unhappy wife of King Fuoquor, met Yashak, the jealous brother of King Fuoquor, and they conspired together based on their hatred for King Fuoquor to have an illicit sexual affair together behind the back of King Fuoquor. Princess Lucina and Yashak would travel to the surface world to the home of Emo, the exiled brother of King Fuoquor and Yashak, and it is here where they would have their illicit affair. This affair between Princess Lucina and Yashak went on for months, with them sneaking back and forth from the inner earth to the surface world, and eventually Princess Lucina became pregnant. In her pregnant state, Princess Lucina would not return to the land of the inner earth, but would remain at the home of Emo, and Yashak would stay with her. It was here in the home of Emo, 20 miles outside of the present-day city of Mecca, Saudi Arabia, where the child Yaqub was born to Yashak and Princess Lucina. The child Yaqub, being part Shayuk and part Sinin, had an enormous head the size of 2 men, and he also had 2 brains. Knowing that they could not return to the inner earth because their affair had now produced a child, Yashak and Princess Lucina decided to live and raise the baby Yaqub for 5 years in the home of Emo, 20 miles outside of the present-day city of Mecca, Saudi Arabia. Yaqub's father Yashak would work as a scientist and a priest amongst the humans on the surface, calling himself by the title Mornuakan, the last high priest. Back in inner earth, Yashak and Princess Lucina had been missing for years, and eventually it was found out by King Fuoquor about the affair between his wife Princess Lucina and his brother Yashak. King Fuoquor ordered his soldiers to go to the home of his brother Emo and arrest Yashak for his crime, and according to the laws of the Shayuk, Yashak was put to death. Princess Lucina's life was spared because she now had a child to take care of, but her punishment was to remain exiled to the surface world living in the home of Emo, and to never return to inner earth. Depressed about her inability to return home, overwhelmed by her new responsibility to raise a child, and saddened by the death of her lover Yashak, Princess Lucina kills herself by committing suicide. The 5-year-old child Yaqub, now an orphan, is raised by his uncle Emo, and the child Yaqub is emotionally disturbed and rebellious because of the death of his parents. The child Yaqub grows to hate his people, the Shayuk, and he also grows to hate all dark-complexioned people because he blames them for the death of his parents. The child Yaqub desires to have his revenge when he grows up. Yaqub starts school at the age of 4, and is teased and mocked about the size of his head by the surface-dwelling human children. This mockery and teasing about the size of his head that Yaqub experienced as a child created low self-esteem, and further infuriated the already deranged Yaqub, fueling his desire for revenge. Yaqub's uncle Emo would tell Yaqub stories about the beings in the inner earth and how the Samin were the manifestation of the evil grafted out of Yaqub's mother's family, the Sinin. One day, when Yaqub was 6 years old, he was playing with 2 steel magnets in the home of his uncle Emo, and Yaqub noticed the magnetic power of attraction and repulsion that unlike attracts, and like repels. By observing this, Yaqub was inspired with a determined idea to create a tribe unlike any of the people on the surface of the planet, and this unlike tribe would be weak and wicked, and attract the other tribes on the surface of the planet, and rule over them with the knowledge of tricks and lies for 6,000 years. Upon coming to this realization, Yaqub looked up at his uncle Emo and said, "Uncle, when I get to be an old man, I am going to make a people who shall rule you." Uncle Emo said, "What will you make?" "Someone to make mischief and cause bloodshed in the land." Yaqub responded to his uncle Emo by saying, "Nevertheless, uncle, I know that which you do not know," and it was at that moment, the boy Yaqub first came into the knowledge of just who he was, born to make trouble, break peace, kill and destroy, and be the enemy to the Ebenoid people of Earth. Yaqub knew in order to accomplish his plan he would have to study science, biology, and genetics. Yaqub was a child prodigy in school, being exceptionally smarter than the surface-dwelling humans he was going to school with, and by the age of 18, Yaqub had finished all of the colleges and universities of his nation. While in college, Yaqub was mocked and teased, being called the big head scientist. After graduating from the colleges and universities of his nation, Yaqub began to preach a new doctrine to the people in the city. Yaqub called his new doctrine Tricknology, and his holy book was called the Book of Tricknology of 120 Degrees. Yaqub taught that if people followed his doctrine, then they would be able to rule the world for 6,000 years, and make slaves out of everyone else on the earth. Yaqub made such impressions on the people that many people began following him. The children who once mocked and teased Yaqub were now requesting to be part of what he was teaching. The girls who once laughed at Yaqub were now women who desired him. As Yaqub's teachings spread, he made more and more converts to his new doctrine, and the power of Yaqub's doctrine began to intimidate the king of the surface-dwelling humans, who ordered to have Yaqub and all of his followers thrown in prison. The police arrested all of Yaqub's followers and put them in prison, and filled up all of the prison cells with Yaqub's followers. However, there was not enough space to put all of Yaqub's followers in jail, therefore there were still some people free who were spreading Yaqub's teachings. The police notified the king that they did not have enough space for all of Yaqub's followers, and at that point the king decided to go to Yaqub's prison cell and negotiate a deal. The king went to visit Yaqub in his prison cell, and the king said, "So you are Mr. Yaqub?" Yaqub said, "Yes, I am." The king said, "Yaqub, I have come to see if we could work out some agreement that would bring about an end to this trouble. What would you suggest?" Yaqub said to the king, "If you give me and my followers everything to start a civilization, and furnish us with money and other necessities of life for 20 years, I will take my followers and we will leave." The king was pleased with the deal offered by Yaqub, and agreed to take care of them for 20 years, until Yaqub's followers were able to go for themselves. After 20 years, the government began to make preparation for the exiling of Yaqub and his followers. The king ordered everyone rounded up who was a believer in Yaqub's doctrine, and they took them to the seaport and loaded them on ships. When Yaqub and his followers departed, there were a total of 59,999 followers, plus Yaqub, making 60,000 total people on 100 ships. Yaqub and his fleet of ships departed from an area 20 miles outside of the present-day city of Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and set sail on the Red Sea, and sailed all the way around the continent of Africa to go to their destination, which was the area which is currently called the island of Patmos, or Palam, in the Aegean Sea. While on the ships sailing around Africa to get to the area which is currently called the island of Patmos, Yaqub began the second part of his plan, which was a eugenics human graftation experiment. Even though all of the people on the surface of the earth were of one tribe, the Ebenoid tribe, there was still some variation within the Ebenoid tribe, and Yaqub began to highlight these differences, and Yaqub taught these people that they were special, because Yaqub planned to use them to graft his new tribe. Yaqub developed his theory by studying his own genetics under the microscope and noticing that there were two different genes in him, one gene that was dark from his father Yishak's family, the Shayuk, and the other that was not dark from his mother Princess Lucina's family, the Sinin. Yaqub began to have children with the women on this ship, and the babies which were born that were a lighter complexion he would spare their life, but the babies which were born which were of a darker complexion, Yaqub would have thrown overboard into the ocean. Yaqub felt if he could successfully separate the darker gene from the lighter gene, then he could graft the Ebenoid tribe into its last stage, which would be albinoid. Yaqub planned to create a tribe of albinoids, which he discovered was weaker than the Ebenoid gene, which would be unalike, to rule the Ebenoid nation for 6,000 years. When Yaqub's followers found out about his new wicked plan, and learned that he was killing and throwing babies overboard into the ocean, 95% of his followers lost their loyalty to Yaqub, and abandoned his mission and jumped ship. As Yaqub's fleet of ships sailed around Africa, people who lost loyalty to his mission would jump ship